Hello. An owner hires an architect to design a warehouse for self-driving 18-wheeler truck technology. Because the warehouse includes sensitive trade secrets, the owner would like to protect the building from intrusion by industrial spies, but would like to limit the number of cameras mounted on the building so that employees don't feel like they're being watched. Actually, this should be they're, They're. They're being watched. Which of the following options offers the best solution? CCTV domes, conventional CCTV, pan tilt zoom CCTV, or thermal CCTV? Well, let's go through all the different kind of security options there are. So one basket, kind of the kingdom of the kingdom, phylum, genus, species, whatever, is we have a set of technology that keeps you from entering. Say it's a prison, or say it's a subway, or say it's any place with security, like a warehouse for technology that includes self-driving, like really sensitive self-driving truck technology. So that's one basket, and the other basket is something to detect intruders from outside. So one is kind of once you're inside, making sure you don't go too far, and the other, but you're walking through the front door. And the other is people trying to sneak in through the back door. So let's talk about the front door first. So we got to keep them from going in. And so we have all kinds of technologies, and you know what they are anyway. And you probably have a sense from your experience, the relative advantages and disadvantages of each. And you also probably have a sense of which direction things are going. We have intercoms, and if you're pulling up to a apartment complex or something like that, you need to talk to somebody. You might have something like an intercom. You have these proximity cards. They're RFID cards, and they're pretty popular, like if you're in a hotel room, or if you're in an apartment building, or sometimes your office. Now, there are two types of these. There are standard proximity cards that are RFID, and there is something called Mayfair, M-I-F-A-R-E. It's kind of a technology that came out of Europe. And the regular proximity card, that basically is dumber. In other words, it just knows that you have permission to enter. And so when you go with your RFID, radio frequency identification, when you hold it near the scanner, it will say, I read something that has a chip, and that chip has a number, and I'm going to send that number to a central computer. And if that number is currently on the list of people who can be admitted, then we're going to go ahead and unlock the door or let the turnstile rotate. The Mayfair card is smarter. So that's what you use for they're pretty indestructible. The kind of semi-rigid subway, they're pretty rigid, semi-rigid subway cards. They can not only tell you, that you're near, but they can hold a certain amount of information, like how much money you have on your subway card, so you can, go through the turnstile. They could hold information about all kinds of information about you, or you could put money on them, or that type of thing. All right, and then we have all these kind of biometric cards, right? So the most common probably is, well, maybe was fingerprints. We now have facial recognition technology, which was amazing when it first came out not too long ago on phones. So it could be a fingerprint, that's common. It could be your iris. It could be facial recognition. It could be vein patterns on your hand, or on your palm, or on your finger. It could be voice recognition. They have that too. Some of you guys have called customer service and they recognize your voice. And we're obviously coming with all kinds of different ones. I think the next wave is going to be ones where you basically hold up your passport or license next to your face. And so that way, if you're a visitor, they know exactly who you are, and they'll verify that you are the visitor and that you are the same person as the license. So if you're the same as the license, then they'll let you in, but then they have a record of exactly who just came in. So if something bad happens, they can hunt you down later. That's my prediction. Anyhow, sometimes there's a PIN number. Sometimes there's a combination, like a PIN and like this one, like a PIN and a fingerprint. Sometimes a combination of a PIN and a proximity card or a Mayfair card. And like I said, facial recognition, and basically we want to be able to, keep people out when we keep people out. All right. Now, if you have a fence around your warehouse, you might want to install. It's like a fiber optic detection system. So there's fiber optics, and fiber optic cables are just basically are little wires that are hollow on the inside, and they're mirrored on the inside, and they send light signals down. So when you hear about a fiber optic cable, it's just they're sending light down a tube with a bunch of mirrors, essentially. And the way that this works is you can weave it into the fence, and then if the fence shakes, like from someone climbing over it, then it will alert the security team, and it can also know within about 15 feet where you are. So, and same with if you cut it. If you cut it, it can know within about 15 feet of where you cut it. So if you're the intruder and you happen to know this is there, and it's not so easy to detect, but if you knew it was there, you could cut it, but they would know it was cut, and right away, and they would know about where it was cut. And so that's often woven into a fence. You see it here. It's kind of, up and over and up and over and up and over. It could also be on the top of a wall to sense vibrations there from someone climbing over, or you can even bury them so that the intruder doesn't even know you're aware that he's crossed the line. You bury him shallow, and you set the sensitivity to someone walking or crawling or running on it, and then it knows, and it trips the alarm for the security. And that's a big thing for like airports. This is the kind of thing they put on airports because they don't want terrorists climbing the fence. All right, and then so we've moved, as you saw from the fiber optic cable, we've moved from you come in the front door and we have to know whether or not you can pass. And now we're kind of at this stage where we're saying, okay, with the fence, we're saying, okay, we want to make sure that you can't even get in. You can't even get in our property if you're trying to sneak in through the back door. Along those same lines, we have two different types of cameras. One type of camera is called a passive camera, and one type, of course, what the other one's going to be, is active. And the passive is also called a thermal camera or an infrared camera. And an active camera is also called a microwave or radar camera. And in the passive variety, basically, you're sending out a signal. I'm sorry, you're not sending out a signal. In the passive variety, you have essentially two infrared cameras. Sometimes they're attached to lights. Sometimes they're on the inside, sometimes they're on the outside, but you have two infrared cameras. And so one kind of measures the background. And if the body goes by that has heat, like a human or like a dog, that's the problem we're going to get into. Then the kind of baseline camera that measures how it's supposed to be, kind of gradually, it will contradict the rapid fire camera that's kind of starting to understand what's changed. And the algorithm will look at the way it was and the way it always has been versus how it is now. And if they see that something hot is moving, they assume a person is there that maybe should not be. Now, the problem with these, of course, is that all kinds of animals give off heat. And so it could be a cat or a dog, it could be a raccoon. But in the case of the passive or infrared or thermal cameras, you can adjust the sensitivity. So you can say, okay, it has to be something really warm. So the advantage of it is you can adjust the sensitivity so that it recognizes whether it's a human or not. So if it's going off all the time, every time a bird flies by or a raccoon scurries by or a cat goes by, you can change the sensitivity to make it more human-centered in terms of its sensitivity. Now, it's not so good at things that are moving really slowly. So if you're like a jewel heist person on a European movie or something, if you're moving slow enough, it may not catch you. it may not recognize that there's some kind of a difference. Of course, there's also screens so that people can, see what's there. But the idea of these cameras is that even if no one's staring at it, it can trip an alarm if somebody comes by. So the advantage is it's not overly sensitive. And the disadvantage is, you can crawl and really slowly and maybe get by. The other type of camera I mentioned is and both of these work at night, right? Because it's probably nighttime that you're most worried about it. The other type is the active system, and in the active system, it's sending out radar. So instead of receiving thermal images, it's actually sending out radar, and that radar recognizes that there's movement. The advantage of that is even slow movement gets caught, but the disadvantage of that is it's super sensitive. So there's false alarms all the time from critters. So when a deer goes by or something like that, then it will trip it and it will not know the difference between a deer running and a human running, at least not yet. Maybe we're there eventually. Now, that's for kind of nighttime. For daytime, we have just regular cameras. So just conventional cameras, just your everyday standard cameras. And we have domes. So a dome looks something like this, and the domes are usually used on the ceiling so that the cashier
Don't know where they're looking at.
So yeah, so the advantage of domes from an owner's point of view, the disadvantage from a thief's point of view, a shady blackjack dealer's point of view, is that they can look at you and you don't know which way they're facing, and oftentimes they're facing every direction, like in this particular application. So you can mount them on the ceiling, and you don't have to worry that a cashier who has positioned herself in a place where the camera is not pointing is doing something nefarious, because A, the camera may be pointing everywhere, and B, the cashier has no idea which way the camera is pointing. But our correct answer in this particular case, and I know it's kind of a stretch because there are lots of answers in this case that could be correct, but our best answer is this one that rotates. So it's the pan, tilt, pan. Here, let's go back and look at the actual question. So it's this pan, tilt, zoom, or it's also called PLT camera, closed circuit TV camera. And the advantage of that is because it can pan and tilt and zoom, because it's motorized, you can have fewer cameras installed because it can sweep a larger perimeter, because you don't have to worry about people who might know where the camera is and where it's pointed kind of moving behind it. So you don't have to have them everywhere. You can have one that's sweeping the area, or maybe two or three. All right, guys. Good night. Get licensed.